How a super empath tortures a narcissist. Vertical bar, Shihengyi wisdom. The greatest punishment for a narcissist is not revenge, it's exposure. A super empath doesn't need to raise their voice or fight back. They simply see the truth and refuse to play the game. The narcissist feeds on control, chaos, attention, but the empath starves them with silence, with presence, with emotional clarity. You don't torture the narcissist by attacking them. You do it by healing yourself. Because nothing unsettles a manipulator more than someone they can no longer manipulate. Stay until the end. The final lesson is where the real power begins. The narcissist's only weapon is your reaction. The narcissist does not dominate by strength. They dominate through distortion. They don't need to shout, control your schedule, or make visible demands to manipulate you. All they need is one thing: your reaction. That's their access point. That's the door. They bait you with subtle jabs, backhanded compliments, guilt-laced questions, and emotional sabotage. They plant seeds of confusion, not to destroy you outright, but to make you do the job yourself. The narcissist survives by getting inside your nervous system, by rewriting the way you interpret reality. And the moment you start reacting, explaining, justifying, defending, you're no longer standing in your truth. You've stepped into their frame. And once you enter that frame, everything becomes fog. You don't know what's real anymore. You don't know who you are around them. You just know you're drained, uncertain, walking on eggshells, slowly dissolving. This is the brilliance of their strategy. It's covert. They don't use weapons. They use you. They use your empathy, your kindness, your clarity, your need for peace. They know you're the one who reflects, apologizes, and tries to make things right. And so they turn that against you. They trap you not with rage, but with confusion. 1 minute you feel close. The next they're cold. 1 minute you're the love of their life. The next you're the villain in a story you don't understand. And you stay because you think you can fix it. Because they made you believe that you are the unstable one. That you are the problem. That if you just explain better, try harder, give more, they'll stop changing the rules. But they won't, because the chaos is not accidental. It's the tool. And your reaction is the reward. The empath suffers most in this dynamic, not because they're weak, but because they're wired to feel. They sense shifts, they want resolution, they crave harmony, and they believe deeply in the good in people. So when they're attacked, they don't fight, they understand. When they're manipulated, they reflect. When they're hurt, they reach in instead of pulling away. But that exact softness is what keeps them entangled. The narcissist doesn't feed on conflict. They feed on your effort, your willingness to stay in the room, your willingness to justify yourself over and over again. They don't want healing, they want control. And control is easier to maintain when you never leave the frame they've built for you. But here's what the narcissist fears most: your silence. Not the silence that comes from being hurt, not the silence that's temporary, but the final silence. The silence that doesn't come from punishment, but from clarity. The silence that comes from no longer needing anything from them. Because once you stop needing, you stop reacting. And once you stop reacting, you break the contract. The game ends, and they know it. That's why they will try to provoke you back in. They'll alternate between flattery and cruelty. They'll beg, then blame. They'll act like the victim. They'll remind you of who you were together before everything cracked. But all of it is bait. All of it is a test to see if they can still pull your energy, if they can still make you question yourself, if they can still sit in your head uninvited. The only way out is not to fight harder. The fight is the fuel. The way out is to stop playing, to exit the frame, to stop trying to prove your worth to someone who only values your submission. When a super empath stops explaining, stops apologizing, stops needing, the narcissist begins to fall apart. Not because you attacked them, but because you disappeared from their grip. You became emotionally invisible. You became unavailable to their games. And for someone who thrives on control, that silence is not peace, it's defeat. They don't know what to do with someone they can't move. They can't seduce presence from a soul that has already reclaimed its energy. They can't feed on someone who stopped bleeding attention. So reclaim your breath. Reclaim your nervous system. Reclaim your clarity. And remember, your reaction is the hook. Your energy is the fuel, and your silence, the kind that comes from no longer needing, is the weapon. Walk away without flinching. That's how you win. Not by defeating them, but by becoming someone they can no longer reach. Power doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes power is the one who stops speaking first. The empath's greatest mistake before they rise is believing that truth alone can win the battle. They explain, they reason, they offer evidence, clarity, compassion, and perspective, hoping that if they just say the right thing, the confusion will end. But the narcissist is not seeking understanding. They are seeking submission. They are not interested in clarity. They are addicted to control. And the more the empath speaks, the more the narcissist tightens the rope, twisting words, weaponizing kindness, turning logic into loops that drain the spirit. This is not a conversation. It's a performance. One designed to keep the empath entangled long enough to forget where they started, to forget who they were before they began explaining themselves. But the super empath, once awakened, plays a different game. They stop explaining, not because they've given up, but because they've seen through. They understand that truth doesn't need to wrestle, that dignity doesn't beg, and that the one who needs to manipulate reality through distortion has already revealed their weakness. So the super empath doesn't retaliate. They withdraw, not in fear, but in power, in clarity, in sacred distance. They move from defense to discernment, from arguing to observation, from reaction to stillness. And this stillness is not passive. It's not silence born of collapse. It's silence born of command, because nothing destroys the narcissist faster than the absence of emotional fuel. They don't fear anger, they don't fear argument, they fear the void, the emptiness where their chaos used to echo back. They fear the mirror that shows them nothing but their own distortion, without anyone else to distract or devour. When the super empath goes quiet, something begins to shift. The narcissist feels it. The weight of their mask starts to tremble. Because their power has never come from within, it has always come from what they could pull out of you. Your attention, your emotion, your vulnerability. But now, it's gone. You're still. You're watching. You're no longer trying to fix, to explain, to prove. And in that space, their identity begins to unravel. Not because you destroyed it, but because you stopped holding it together. They don't know who they are without your emotional reaction. They don't know how to maintain control in the face of quiet resistance. Because they've spent their life mastering the art of pulling strings, but you've cut yours. You're no longer a puppet in their show. You've stepped off the stage. And now there's only silence. But this silence is not empty. It's full of sovereignty, full of healed boundaries, full of energy you've reclaimed. You no longer live in response to their chaos. You no longer shrink to keep the peace. You no longer mirror their madness in the name of compassion. Because now you understand, not everyone is ready for your softness, not everyone deserves your attention, and not everyone will meet your depth with depth. Some will only try to control it, diminish it, exploit it, and your power is not in fixing that, it's in walking away from it, completely, quietly, without needing to be understood, vindicated, or even heard. The super empath doesn't win by out-talking the narcissist. They win by becoming unreachable. Their energy becomes clean, focused, untouchable. They no longer walk into emotional ambushes. They no longer carry the weight of someone else's wounds. They've stopped treating dysfunction like a puzzle to solve. Instead, they've become a mirror, silent, centered, and the narcissist. They can't survive that. They can't manipulate silence. They can't twist stillness. They can't feed off what refuses to flinch. So if you are the empath, know this: your silence is not weakness. It is strategy. It is strength. It is the moment you stopped performing for someone else's dysfunction and started returning to yourself. The moment you stopped being baited, drained, and broken and became the one thing the narcissist cannot touch: free. Boundaries are the empath's weapon. A super empath doesn't seek revenge. That idea doesn't even live in their consciousness once they awaken. They don't need to match the narcissist's chaos or prove anything through conflict. Because when they finally step into their power, they realize something far more profound. They don't need to destroy the narcissist, they simply need to become inaccessible. They don't burn bridges out of rage. They build walls out of clarity, not reactive walls, not defensive armor, but quiet, unshakable boundaries made of pure self-respect. The kind of boundaries that don't scream, don't shake, and don't need to justify their presence. They simply exist, and that existence alone becomes the beginning of the end for the narcissist. You see, narcissists don't just manipulate people, they feed off them. Your kindness, your forgiveness, your instinct to explain yourself, those are all sources of fuel. Not because they want to understand you, but because they want to own you. Your reactions, your emotions, your confusion, that's their currency. They don't operate in love. They operate in control. And control requires access. But when a super empath evolves, when they stop playing therapist to dysfunction and start protecting their own nervous system, the access is cut off. Not with rage, not with drama, but with something far more devastating: silence wrapped in structure. The empath used to feel guilty for setting limits. They would hesitate to say no. They would collapse under emotional pressure, thinking compassion required tolerance. But after enough cycles, enough betrayals, enough gaslit nights wondering if they're the problem, their nervous system learns, their soul tightens, and then something clicks. A realization sharper than any confrontation: I don't owe my energy to anyone who manipulates it. That is the shift. That's when the doors close, not out of punishment, but out of peace. And once those doors close, something terrifying happens on the other side. The narcissist is left alone. Alone with their own echo, alone with the absence of control, alone with a calm they can't penetrate. They knock and the empath doesn't answer. They bait and the empath doesn't bite. They provoke and the empath doesn't flinch. What they used to own, attention, emotional dominance, psychological space, is no longer available. And this silence isn't passive. It's not cold. It's sacred. It's earned. It's the sound of an empath reclaiming their timeline, their breath, their self-concept. And for the narcissist, that silence is not peace, it's starvation. Because here's the truth: narcissists don't know who they are without reflection. They don't have a stable identity of their own. They require mirrors, other people to project themselves onto. And when the empath stops reflecting, when they stop carrying the weight, when they stop adjusting themselves to avoid being misunderstood, the narcissist begins to unravel. Not because they were defeated in battle, but because the battlefield was abandoned. The game ended, the stage went dark, and there's nothing more painful for someone addicted to control than irrelevance. Boundaries are the empath's weapon. Not walls of fear, but walls of standard. Not silence of avoidance, but silence of alignment. The kind of silence that says, I see you, I understand you, and I no longer participate. It is the stillness that drives a narcissist to madness, because they were built to thrive in chaos and you no longer live there. They were trained to dominate in disorder, and you've replaced every point of entry with peace. Now the narcissist has nothing to argue with, nothing to flip, no reaction to twist. The script is done. The empath has rewritten the narrative, and they wrote themselves out of it. This is the highest form of power. Not dominance, not vengeance, but emotional sovereignty. The super empath becomes self-sourced, no longer needing closure, no longer seeking validation, no longer questioning their worth based on someone else's broken lens. They don't look back because there's nothing left to fix. They don't explain because clarity has replaced confusion. And they don't chase because they've finally come home to themselves. So understand this: the game doesn't end in war. It ends in detachment. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started choosing yourself. The inner work that destroys the outer game. The real shift doesn't happen in a dramatic confrontation. It doesn't happen when the empath shouts, slams the door, or finally says everything they've been holding in. That's what the narcissist expects. That's what they prepare for. Because they know how to win that game. They feed on chaos. They twist words. They flip pain into performance. The more dramatic the ending, the more they stay relevant. But the super empath doesn't play that script. They don't explode. They evolve. And that evolution isn't loud. It's internal, quiet, daily, invisible from the outside until it's far too late to stop. Because the real power, the kind that ends the game completely, comes from inner work. It starts small. The empath begins waking up early, not to run from their thoughts, but to meet them. They sit in silence, not out of sadness, but out of choice. They stop explaining themselves, not because they gave up, but because they finally understood. The narcissist never wanted understanding. They wanted control. And the moment the empath breaks that spell, not with anger, but with structure, everything begins to shift. The empath builds rhythm where there was once chaos. They create habits. They return to the breath. They stretch their body. They ground their nervous system. And every day they repeat that practice, they become less reactive, less chaotic, less available to the noise. The narcissist, watching from a distance, maybe through social media, maybe through mutual circles, maybe just in their mind, starts to feel something they never expected: irrelevance. Because what they counted on was collapse. They thought the empath would fall apart without their attention. They expected a storm of messages, a cycle of emotional collapse, a series of regretful calls. They expected to be begged for closure, chased for answers, fought for. But that never comes. Instead, they're met with silence. Worse than silence, distance. Emotional, spiritual, psychological. The empath has left the playing field completely. And now the narcissist is left with something they've never truly faced before: their own reflection. Their control doesn't work anymore. Their chaos doesn't land, their manipulation bounces off. Because the empath isn't playing the role anymore, they've become a mirror. And mirrors don't speak, they reflect. This is where the narcissist begins to crack. Because their entire illusion of power was built on a single idea: access. As long as they could access your attention, they had control. As long as you kept responding, reacting, returning, they were fed. But inner work cuts access at the root. The routines, the breath work, the emotional discipline, the reflection. These aren't just self-care, they're weapons. Not weapons of war, but weapons of alignment. Every time the empath chooses structure over reaction, they sever a tie. Every time they journal instead of justify, they reclaim a piece of themselves. Every time they respond with calm instead of chaos, they take their power back. Until eventually, they are no longer a version of themselves that the narcissist even recognizes. This is the true death of the narcissist's fantasy, not through rage, but through irrelevance. Not through revenge, but through the complete collapse of the frame they built. Because that frame was always an illusion. Their power was never real. It was borrowed. It only existed as long as you gave it life. And now, it's gone. Not because you destroyed them, but because you built you. Stronger, quieter, more grounded than ever. They don't know how to reach you anymore, not because you're hiding, but because you're healed. So keep doing the inner work. Keep rising in the hours no one sees. Keep breathing when the old triggers try to pull you back. Keep creating rhythm when emotion wants to create noise. Because every time you do, you rewrite the story not just of your relationship, but of your identity. You go from empath to alchemist, from victim to mirror, from energy supply to sovereign force. That's what the narcissist cannot touch. Not your presence, not your progress, not your peace. Because the outer game was never real. The inner work is. And now it's all that remains. Emotional starvation is the narcissist's collapse. The narcissist does not operate like most people. They don't draw energy from within. They don't create peace, build meaning, or experience intimacy in the way emotionally whole individuals do. Instead, they survive by feeding on the feelings of others, especially the deep, rich emotional landscapes of empaths. That's their currency. That's their oxygen. It's not love they want. It's not connection they seek. It's supply. Attention, reaction, emotional volatility, those are their resources. And this is why they hunt empaths with such precision. Because empaths feel everything. They give more. They care more. They explain, they soothe, they absorb, they reflect. To the narcissist, an empath isn't just a person, they're a well, a bottomless source of emotional substance, a living, breathing resource. But what the narcissist never expects is the moment the well runs dry, not from exhaustion, not from collapse, but from clarity, from evolution. From the super empath who no longer plays the part, who no longer justifies, explains, or reacts. Because the moment the emotional supply is cut not through drama, but through stillness, the collapse begins. The narcissist doesn't fall apart when you scream. They don't unravel when you fight back. They thrive on that. Conflict feeds them. Attention, positive or negative, is still energy. Even pain is valuable to them, as long as it keeps them in your head, in your heart, in your space. But when they are met with nothing, that's when the true destruction begins. No attention, no validation, no resistance. Just a clean, quiet presence. Just focused energy. Just peace that no longer needs to be explained. To the narcissist, this is not just silence, it's starvation. Peace cannot be provoked. Clarity cannot be manipulated. And when you no longer feel the need to be heard by someone who was never listening in the first place, you become immune to their game. That immunity is the collapse. Because their entire identity, the image they curate, the dominance they crave requires a stage. And now that stage is empty. The audience is gone. The story is over. You've walked off not in anger, but in truth. The narcissist doesn't spiral because you left. They spiral because you no longer look back. They can't manipulate what no longer engages. They can't dominate someone who no longer reacts. That absence becomes unbearable, not because they loved you, but because they lost control over you. Narcissists don't know what to do when they become irrelevant. And irrelevance to them is death, not literal death, but ego death, identity death, because they've spent their entire existence surviving on emotional oxygen provided by others. And now the valve is closed, the silence is firm, the peace is permanent, and the game is gone. This is what emotional starvation really looks like. Not loud, not explosive, but still, quiet, unshakable. The empath doesn't disappear in rage. They rise in discipline. They breathe. They move forward. They stop giving second chances to someone who only saw them as a resource. And in doing so, they stop being a mirror for the narcissist's projected image. They become a mirror to themselves instead. And that mirror shows strength, not softness. It shows peace, not performance. And that peace doesn't just heal the empath, it destroys the narcissist. Because nothing breaks someone addicted to control more than not being needed, not being missed, not being relevant. That's what burns the deepest. Not being fought but being forgotten, not being confronted but being ignored. Because in the narcissist's world, silence isn't golden, it's fatal. It means the story has ended. Their name is no longer written in your mind. Their voice no longer echoes in your chest. Their grip is broken not by force, but by detachment. So let the silence hold. Let your peace speak. Don't chase, don't explain, don't return. Just be rooted, clear, calm. That is what breaks them. Not noise, but your refusal to supply it. Because when you take your energy back, you take their power with it. And that is how you end the cycle, not with noise, but with nothing. A super empath tortures a narcissist not by breaking them, but by refusing to break for them. Not by hurting them, but by healing themselves. Not by attacking, but by rising in silence, in focus, in peace. You don't win by becoming like them. You win by becoming you fully, freely, and without apology. In the end, they will beg for access. They will try to return. They will test the door. But the super empath has already moved on. Not with hate, but with peace. And that peace, that is the deepest pain a narcissist can feel. Because it's the one thing they can never fake and the one thing they will never have.